If disaster were to strike right now, today, would your family have any idea what to do? Hey everyone, Morgan here. Every household needs a written emergency plan and they all need to be on board. I do not care if your husband, spouse, whoever, or your kids or whoever does not believe in preparedness. You need to sit them down and you need to say, this is the emergency plan and this is what we're going to do. This video is going to cover step-by-step instructions to build your own plan, bugging in versus bugging out planning, communication strategies, where to store the plan, and how often to review and update it. So let's get going. Okay, so we have talked in this series a lot about stuff, right? But I truly believe that an emergency disaster plan is one of the biggest, most important things that you can have in your preps because it's going to tell you what to do. Everybody always says, okay, well, that bugging out is great, but where do I go? That's where the emergency disaster plan is going to come in. Well, okay, I know about the threats in my area, but what the heck do I do about it? That's where your emergency disaster plan is going to come in. Oh, the emergency disaster plan is kind of like a gold nugget of your preparedness. So let's start with the basics. You're going to title your plan something like the Rogue Family Emergency Disaster Plan, right? And then you're going to name all your household members. You're going to have emergency contacts, and I'm putting everything on the screen here so you don't forget. But also there's a 30-day to ready workbook that you can go through this. And I have this in a blog post on my website in which you can go look at and download for yourself to kind of follow along as well. You're going to have the emergency contacts of everybody, okay? You're going to have important information, address, medical information, insurance information, mention any pets you have, if they're up to date on vaccinations, that kind of thing. And then you're going to work on your communication plan. I have a whole communication plan down below that you can go download for free. During a disaster, cell towers could be down, so we want a couple different types of emergency of communication plans. We want the type where maybe you're just texting, maybe you're using a radio, maybe you're using a payphone or a landline. Those still do exist somewhere, some magical area and space. You also want a no contact, as in, where are you going to meet? That communication plan is going to talk about where you are going to meet if you're separated, okay? How long to wait before you're reconnected, because you don't always want to rely on your phone. And you know what? When I was young, I was able to remember every single phone number at like of all my friends and family and everybody. Now I can remember one phone number, and that's my husband's. And that's it. Okay. Well, technically two, my number and my husband's. So that's it. That's all I remember. Okay, the next one is going to be your bug-in plan. So you're sheltering at home. You're going to identify what disasters are most likely to happen in your area, which we've already talked about in the beginning of this series, identifying the most common threats in your area. Plan for at least 2 weeks of self-reliance. That's just a beginning point. I want you to be 30 days reliant, okay? But you want to cover, where are the supplies, right? If you have your supplies everywhere in your house, do you have it in your prepper closet? Do you have it under the bed? Do you have it in your daughter's, sister's, whatever, closets? Where are these things? Go ahead and locate bin by bin, or whatever, where things are, so that not just you know where they are, but everybody else can look at this sheet and say, oh, okay, there's the extra water. I know where to access it, okay? This, we shouldn't be hiding our preps from our family. How to stay warm and cool, like what are your contingencies for if the power goes out and, you need to stay warm or cool. Lighting, cooking, sanitation options. Again, people can look at this and say, well, what do I do about this? Like, let's say, it's just like, your husband is at home, with the kids, and you're off, you're the main prepper. Well, you can tell your husband, just look at the emergency disaster plan and you're going to know what to do. This is for anybody to be able to easily look at it, read it, access it, get to these points and say, okay, I know what to do now, right? And especially in like really stressful situations, having a plan like this so that people can physically look at this and say, okay, I'm going to remember what to do. Because during stressful situations, especially if you don't do a lot of mock drills or something like that, or even if you do, a lot of people don't handle stress well. So having something physical in front of you that they can reference is super important, okay? So assign roles, like, is anybody going to check on your neighbors? Who's going to care for the pets? Who's going to handle security, right? Practice staying at home without 24 hours. That's a really good mock run. And what you could do during that mock drill is to write notes Okay, here's what went really well, and here's our holes and where we need to improve, right? So the next step is your bug out plan, evacuating, right? Bugging out is just evacuating, okay? This is not some dystopian novel, okay? This is just bugging out. It's evacuating from a situation that is potentially causing you to be forced from your home for whatever reason. It could be a natural disaster. It could even be civil unrest, right? It could be a lot of different things. You need to decide your bug out locations. This is where everybody's like, well, where do I bug out to? This is it. You're deciding it in your emergency disaster plan. You're going to decide on like one kind of local place, maybe like 30 minutes out of town, something like that. One really out of town place, like maybe your sister's and, a few hours away, or like a national park or something. And then one out of state where it's completely out of state, somewhere where you're going to have to get to, to get to. Primary and secondary evacuation routes. In fact, I would have multiple evacuation routes. Everybody's like, oh yeah, when it comes time to evacuate, so does everybody else. That's right. So you want multiple ways to get out. Now I know that's kind of tough. I seem to recall somewhere in Florida where it's like there's one road in and out of the state or something like that. But you can evacuate at any time, okay? Do not ever wait for somebody to tell you to evacuate. You use your own best judgment and say, you know what, things are getting hairy. I'm just going to go ahead and leave, especially before everybody else tries to leave. But even during evacuation scenarios, when like the government's saying, okay, it's time to evacuate, there's usually plenty of time for people to get out. It just kind of depends on the scenario, but use your own best judgment and trust your gut, okay? Trust your instincts about when you should leave. And if you come back to your home and everything is great, yay! Okay, how to get there if the roads are closed, right? That's a really big thing. Plan for transportation, like always keep your gas tank full. Where are you going to get gas? What's your alternative transport? If it's like an EMP, okay, this is like a crazy scenario, but it's an EMP and your car stops working. Are you going to walk? Do you have bikes with trailers? What do you got, right? Okay, so what to grab? So you're going to grab your bug out bag. You're going to grab your documents. You're going to grab your pets. You're going to grab, maybe some pew-pew, self-defense, whatever you're going to grab. Include your checklist. So you have a checklist of stuff that you are going to grab, okay? This isn't just like, I'm going to grab random things. No, you have a literal checklist. Water, water from there, go bags, the important documents that I listed before, right? Your maps, whatever, right? You have a physical, actual checklist. You're going to grab tote number 5, whatever, right? And all this stuff should be easily accessible either in a closet, in a garage, wherever. It should be easily accessible. Okay, so then your emergency documents. We've talked about that in a past video, what emergency documents you need to have physical copies, as well as you can store it on the USB drives, okay, of your IDs, insurance, any important prescriptions that you may need, your important contacts, your deeds and titles and all this stuff. Keep copies of it in that fire-resistant and water-resistant bag that I showed earlier. You could also keep that in your bug-out bag. You can keep it in a safe and then just go open the safe and take it out as you're trying to leave, whatever. Again, these spots should be where everybody knows where this stuff is. And then you need to have maps, physical maps of your area and then any area that you plan to evacuate to. If you plan to, wherever you plan to evacuate, especially if it's like an out-of-state location, you then need a map for that out-of-state location, right? So you need the maps for your evacuation routes. You need the maps for any shelters or anywhere that you plan to evacuate to. You need the maps for their alternative paths. You need to know where the gas shutoffs are and where the water shutoffs are, where the main breakers are in your home. Nearby locations such as hospitals, fire stations, supply stores. Every time we have moved, one of the first things that I do, I go onto Google Maps and I say hospital or clinic or whatever, and I find exactly where the nearest hospital is, because that's important information to me. If I'm scrambling to get in, and I'm like, okay, first of all, hold on, I gotta look for the nearest hospital. At least now I can have like an idea. You could even print out physical directions to that hospital in case you don't have Google Maps. These are really important things, physical directions to the fire station, physical direction. Let's MapQuest this thing, okay? If y'all are millennials like me, you know what that means. You should have a family household discussion about this. So sit everybody down and have that discussion like I said in the beginning. okay? Everybody needs to know what to do, and they need to know where this is. They need to know what the meeting spots are. Even if they're not like super detailed about like this plan, like they know it by heart like you do, they at least know some basic information. Oh yeah, my mom said that I need to meet up at the school in case I can't get home. Okay, I'm gonna do that, right? It's just like little tidbits of information. But then everybody should be practicing drills. You don't have to every month, maybe like every few months, put it on the calendar, okay? And then you're gonna practice like a fire drill. You're gonna practice just like a bug out drill. You're gonna practice a bug in drill. You're gonna practice little drills for just various stuff, whatever is relevant to you in your region. And then store the plan. So you want multiple copies of this. You want it in your documents binder. You want it in your bug out bag. You want it maybe in your safe. Maybe you want to just put it on the side of your fridge so that it is easily accessible for anyone to take. You could also put it on that USB drive, but have lots of copies strewn about everywhere, okay? Review and update it. So every 6 months, you want to come back to this emergency disaster plan and you want to update it. Has there been any changes? Have you moved? Have you changed insurances? Do you think that this evacuation or bug out location is going to be better than this other one, right? You want to update any contact information. If there's any new medical information, any new routes that you've discovered, any new communication methods that you've discovered. Because, preparedness, it is a lifestyle. So you are going to be constantly changing and shifting, especially as your life changes and shifts. So we are going to be changing and shifting along with that and updating it as we need. Usually it's a good idea just to get eyes on it like every 6 months or so. And then every time you do a mock drill, go ahead and grab that disaster plan. And then like from that drill, you'll update it because you'll be like, oh, well, this didn't work out, but this worked really well. So let's double down on that or something like that, right? So I want you to take action right now. I want you to go download that 30 Days to Ready workbook and work along with it. But I also want you to go download this checklist of the emergency disaster plan that I have on my website to download for free so you can make a very detailed emergency disaster plan for you and your household. And again, force your household to sit down and listen to it because regardless, whatever their opinion is about preparedness, they need to know this plan. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, do all these good, awesome things. And remember to conquer tomorrow by preparing today. I will talk to y'all in the next video. Bye-bye.